Hey there. As you may know, I've been learning the ropes of 7-point Highlander. I've been messing around with a few different builds recently, but I think for the purposes of learning, it's time to go back to grinding with one deck and building up mastery so that I can improve at playing that strategy. I felt like I've been punished recently for relying too much on synergy packages, so I'm dedicating myself to a mid-range list, like a lot of people at my local. I've been really struggling with mid-range lists compared to other decks that I've tried, a hybrid aggro, all-in combo, and hard control. And I've noticed a distinct difference in the way that I play in 7-point compared to other formats. Namely, in other formats, when I lose, it feels like there was a complex back and forth with lots of decision points and maybe I made some mistakes, but there was still room to fight back, even though I definitely could have won that match and there was an Altart Sephiroth on the line. By comparison, when I lose in 7-point, it feels like getting jumped by the Maroons in a KFC drive-thru. No matter how much I try to interact with my opponents, I'm just left black and blue without a chance to deploy my own powerful creatures.
But Jonah,
Yeah?
if you have powerful creatures,
Yeah?
why not play them?
Well, I have to deal with their powerful creatures first.
But they're a Black X mid-range deck, right?
Yeah?
And you're a Black X mid-range deck?
Yeah?
Aren't they the same creatures?
So yes, the deck I brought this week was Bug midrange. Not Grixis or Jund, because I wanted to be special. I started with Grist, the best bug available, and followed up with the unstoppable cockroach that is Oko. Not that kind of bug? Yeah, Sultai works too. Oh, there are some really good red cards. No, it's fine. Sultai works. The thing about mid-range is that every card is good almost all the time, prioritizing efficiency in every resource, mana, cards, and deck space. The result is something that is almost impossible to blame for a loss, a deck to surpass Metal Gear. Standing here, I realize you were not like me, tried to make history. After looking at a handful of strong lists, I decided to base my threat count on Justin's Mana Clash winning Grixis deck, which has some really good red cards in it now that I think about it. Nah, I'll be fine. The deck being a bit lighter on threats, and especially with the Planeswalker threats that I want to run, led me to cut the Worldly Fanatic combo, since I'm not reliably going to have something in my graveyard to make it a good top deck. Besides, I've got plenty of actual threats already. Foreshadowing is a narrative device. My draw suite is also pretty deep, a strong reason to be blue, and so I decided I could skimp out on the mana base a little. With 19 lands and 2 land cyclers, I'm 60% to have 2 or 3 lands in my 7, and about the same to have 3 or 4 by turn 3. I even added a basic forest, just in case. Foreshadowing is a narrative. With regards to interaction, I kept it simple. The most efficient 1-for-1 interaction with just my favourite 2-for-1 in Witherbloom Command, which is pretty good at sniping random sideboard cards and 1-drops, usually while drawing me a land in the process. And besides, most of my 2-for-1 value is going to come out of my threat suite. Foreshadowing is I rounded it out with some utility in Reanimate and my recently acquired Aurora Procession before moving it on to the sideboard. Here, I mostly just chucked in some standard cards, which helped to cover my Tron, Eldrazi, and aggro matchups, with some tech for graveyards as well. I also snuck in some mid-range threats which didn't fit the main deck, but are still good at beating other mid-range decks, which is a matchup I expect to see a fair bit of, and plus some admittedly more suspect but undeniably present Magic cards. That leads me to the result, and ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, it is a tremendous honour and privilege to announce the final discovery of Rock Bottom. I'll walk you through the night in the order that I experienced it. First, a couple friendlies before the event actually began. One with a dodgy keep, and then one which I had some outs, but the event actually kicked off, so I scooped. 0-1 matches, 0-2 games. Round 1, and I'm back up against Mardu Beats. Game 1, he Mardus, I get beat. I was stuck on 3 lands for a while, which made it difficult to balance deploying interaction and actually getting on board. By the time I did start to build up my presence, I was way too far behind, and Deadpool finished me off. Game 2, Uro put me on his back and carried me as far as he could, bringing me to a major decision point.
My opponent had Squall and an Overlord of the Baelmerk on 1, and Bomber in hand. I had Uro in play, with Counterspell, Dismember, and Tasigur in hand, and 2 mana open. They cast Bomber, and I tank. Countering it would have to mean blocking with Uro to prevent them getting back one of the many powerful cards in their graveyard, including Flage. I decided to let it through. They attacked with just the Bomber, I dismembered it, and they flung Squall at Uro. While I was able to draw Grist and trade Tasigur with the Overlord, they did get 1 attack in, which filled their bin enough that they could cast Flage and put Detective Phoenix on it, killing me from 10.
This was just one decision, which might not even have impacted the outcome of the game, but I bring it up to show you just how important precise play is with a mid-range deck in this format. You'd be forgiven for thinking, like, put good cards in deck, win. I certainly did, at least a bit. You can see it in my last video. But good cards don't win games of Magic. Good players do. Round 2, I had a lot of similar problems, and I noted after game 1 that I really wanted more mana than I had. Part of that was that my opponent had had a very strong start, drawing a Miracle Max off of a Barragloif trigger, after seeing I had a counterspell in hand. He leveraged that to create a mana advantage by running out his other threats, which I couldn't afford to counter because Miracle Max was just going to bring them back with interest, but I also couldn't afford to tap out because then Miracle Max brings back Barragloif. Stuck in this position, it wasn't long before I was completely overwhelmed. Game 2, I made a really poor mulligan decision, bottoming my only early interaction in days and leaving myself with just a handful of tap lands. I was not playing well. I knew my opponent in round 3 was on red deck wins, and as I kept 6 and saw him mulligan to 5, I decided to engage in a little trolling to lighten the mood. Well, if I say something about how good your mulligan is for me, I mused, then you'll just cast a Mana Crypt and a Blood Moon on turn 1. We had a little laugh. I play a Hedge Maze and pass. Imagine the look on my face when he says Mountain, Lotus Petal, Chrome Mox, Magus of the Moon. It beggars belief. We played it out. I lost, obviously, but mate, I would lose 1,000 games like that just to have the story. Anyway, at game 2, I had a really strong start with Deathrite into Oko, but Oko got red blasted, and after a bit of back and forth, he got me with the Bone Crusher Giant and Detective's Phoenix. Man, that bird is kind of gas, no? There's some really good red cards. My opponent in round 4 was also on red deck wins, and I was quickly beat down in game 1 by Inti and Bomber. Game 2, I saw a Fire Blast off of an early Thoughtseize, and while I did manage to stabilize, I was on 3 life. They had 1 mountain. I drew and cast a game-winning Barragloif 1 turn before they pulled the second mountain and finished me off. That game was the most telling for me. See, my third to last turn, I'd cast Psychic Frog and Tameo. The turn after that, I cast Leovold, and my last turn of the game, I cast Barragloif. I realized that in my last turn of round 3, I'd also had Psychic Frog, Leovold, and Barragloif in my hand. I'd had those cards in my hand when I lost a game in round 2, and even in round 1. See, every time I saw my opponent play a threat, it was something I had to answer. If I don't kill this Inti, they'll draw too many cards and I'll lose. Or this Squall, or that Bomber. I was playing scared. So scared that some of my opponents even thought that I was playing the control deck with Oath of Druids that I brought like a couple weeks ago. And it's not just this week. I remember losing the games in the same way when I played Rihanna midrange, and right back to the start of the format when I played Mardu. I have a mental block. I won't lie, it's a hard realization to make, especially since it's based in correct evaluation. Yeah, these are cards which will win the game on their own if unanswered. Everything is in 7-point. But if I spend all of my time and all of my resources on answers, I categorically cannot progress the game. I'm trying not to lose. I'm not trying to win. But if I don't win, then I must lose. Sun Tzu said that. And I'd say he knows a little bit more about fighting than I do, pal, because he invented it. Then he perfected it, so that no living man could best him in the Ring of Honor. Fighting through a mental block is hard. They exist for a reason. All my experience with these cards and with Magic in general tells me I need to play this way. It's really difficult to convince myself in the moment that fighting the mental block will actually lead to a better outcome. But if fighting is sure to result in victory, then you must fight. I must fight. Be confident in my creatures, play to the board, try not just to avoid losing, but to win. I won't go down so easy next time. Until then, good luck, have fun, and may the best wizard win.